Steve Ross and Dean Van Dyke with you today. Steve obviously is the better looking of the two. So with that, Steve.
Yeah. So, Steve Ross, just a brief introduction. I am passionate about helping founders and startups grow their business. A bit about me. I've been at the executive level, senior planning level at a number of companies, including a go-to-market executive outreach, which is a SaaS company here in the Seattle area. Helped that company scale from 8 million to 230 million. I've also been a senior executive at Tony Robbins' company, big guy, big hands. That guy down in San Diego helped double field sales revenues there and rebrand the customer service. And then also another thing, just helped a company called Marketration, which is in the marketing services industry, grow revenues 15x and during my time there, and then help them exit through acquisition.
Awesome. I will, first, I'm going to apologize. I'm recovering from a respiratory infection. I will mute to the best of my ability so you don't listen to me cough or sneeze. But a little bit about myself. At the age of 19, had my own gas and auto service station. I did leave that behind to see the world. Served 14 years in the Navy and the Army Guard, law enforcement, corporate business owner. And I'll leave you with an interesting fact. I'm probably going to be the only one on this call today that has actually sunk a ship on purpose. So with that said, we'd love to hear and learn a little bit more about you. So if you want to grab a chat window to introduce yourself, including your business and what you hope to get out of this, and we'll get rocking and rolling. All right. So as we come to the end of 2023, fourth quarter is typically used for strategic planning for the next year, for 24. So how many of you, and we've had a few join since we got going, but how many of you have started that process, or actually better yet, how many of you actually love that process? Just by throwing it in the chat. This is Steve, thumbs down. So I've been involved in many different strategic planning sessions, and I equate them to like going to the dentist to get a tooth pulled. And it is a struggle. A lot of times what you run into is, you're focusing all on the budget. And when you do that, you're going to start to lose folks because some of that budget aspect of it doesn't impact them. And so when they're not impacted by it, they tune you out. Lack of alignment, ownership, wrong planning approach. Now, when I launched my business back in 2017, we actually planned it on a napkin. Probably don't recommend doing that, but great quote from Forbes here: focus on the milestones, the tasks, the KPIs. And we're going to talk about that today as we get rolling. So in the next 30 minutes, more than likely 30 minutes, depending on the amount of questions, we're going to get you through this. We're going to talk about how to build that strategic plan, as well as actions and key performance indicators roadmap. So when you think about this reminds me, so I do a podcast, and a good friend of mine is a professional podcaster, and this is exactly what his board looks like. This to me is confusing. And so when I think about this board, this reminds me of a lot of noise, but little to no accountability. And so with that said, we're going to talk about how you build that accountability into your overall plan. With that, I will turn it over to Steve.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, so first thing you want to do is focus on core metrics, the things that actually deliver enterprise value. So, the value of your company, you want it to go up, obviously, as much as you can. So tie the metrics to something's going to guarantee enterprise value, and then also stability, because you want your company to be around for a long time. And build that structure, build that foundation. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that in just 6 things that you need to take a look at. We call them the core 6. So the core 6, and what reason why we think about them in terms of the core 6 is, kind of you think about the podcasting board that Dean was just showing. A lot of people have all these dials, all these reports, all these things that you're looking at. You can go down a million rabbit holes. And ultimately, you're not getting anywhere. So we kind of like to elevate it to the core 6, level 1 KPIs that we recommend. I'll go quickly through them. Some might be familiar to you. Some might be new to you. And even the ones that are familiar to you, you might think, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And so pipeline. We actually have an argument that pipeline might even be more important than revenue. And pipeline is about, your future ability to bring in revenue. And one of the things that some companies actually leave out of this equation is churn, right? So when you're building pipeline to get revenue in the door, you think about, okay, I got to hit a certain goal of, net new revenue, for example, but I know that I'm going to lose 10% of my revenue in churn. And a lot of companies forget that and leave it on the table, and they're like, hey, we hit our goals, but we're still behind. And so really thinking about that, holistically of everything that's going in and out of the business, and it gives you an indication of, are you set for success? When I work with companies, to me, certainly on a business to business perspective, looking for, 3 to 4x pipeline down the road. Revenue, obviously, that's one that every company focuses on and thinks about. And, what we take a look at too is, look at it in percentage basis. So, you could be growing 10% a year, but if your competition or the industry is growing 30% a year, you're falling behind. And so think about it in terms of revenue percentage, not just dollars. Employee engagement, we all count on our employees to make our company successful. And keeping a forward-looking pulse on that can help make sure that you've got retention and engagement with your employees. EBITDA or burn is the cash that's being generated for the business to run. And if you're a startup or you're just getting started, it would be cash burn. I talked a little bit about the revenue churn. And a lot of folks, again, think about this maybe in terms of how many customers have left our business. And we think about it in terms of revenue. Because, if you have one customer leaves, it's a small customer, okay, great. If you have one customer leaves that has a lot of revenue, not so great. And so if you're like, well, we only lost one customer, that customer has a perspective on your business and an impact on your business. And then here's the kind of the final one, and we find that often not really looked at all in a lot of companies. And this can really be an Achilles heel for a company because this is concentration of revenue within one customer or client. Our recommendation is no more than 20%. And so you can imagine if you've got a customer who's 40, 50% of your revenue, which I've certainly worked with companies that have that concern. If that customer leaves or downsizes, you are in a lot of trouble. And we call these, again, the L1 KPIs. These are for the CEO or the business owner to keep an eye on. So we break it down. Just want to use a quick example. A KPI, most people on the call are probably familiar with KPI. But it's kind of a goal, very specific, quantifiable, and have an outcome. And so the example we have here is actually related to the concentration of revenue I just spoke about a minute ago. An example is if we have a goal of as a company that we don't have any one client that's got more than 20% of our revenue, we're in good shape. An example you're seeing here, $100 million a year company, $35 million of it is actually tucked away with one client. So 35% of that revenue is with one client. So we got a problem here. So what we would say in this case is, let's give our team the problem to solve, right? So see how they do with it. And what we find often is you give a team a problem, they're going to figure it out. And so our problem here is we want a goal of no more than 20% in revenue concentration with any one client. We're at 35%, so we've got a delta of 15%. So we break it down. What are the action items we can do to tackle that? Real quick, we've got a VP plan. Okay, hey, how are we gonna go from 35% to 20% in some period of time? So it could be, 1 quarter, 2 quarter, a year, a couple of years. How are we going to make that happen? So we're going to assign that to our VP of sales. Employees are going to kind of, do what they're doing, keep selling, keep bringing in revenue, but there's going to be an action item for them down the road with this new plan. We might think about, okay, well, maybe we make an increase in price. That could help cover some gap. We're going to ask our CFO to model, capacity plan for more sales hires. And we might even have our financial advisors or partners give us an increase in our line of credit to help with our growth. A lot here, but what we're looking to do is we're looking to get alignment across the entire company. So we start with that level one outcome that we talked about, the level one KPIs. Those are for the CEO, the business owner. And then we're going to cascade them down to what we call level two, and then finally level three. Level two is executive team KPIs. And then level three is more of that frontline KPI. What this does is a couple of things. It gets speed of communication, clarity of what the goals are, what the KPIs are, and then we keep people accountable. And what pops out of this is a very clean, clear weekly executive report, and we look at four things. So again, instead of going to that podcast dashboard and you're looking at 85 dials, you're looking at four things every week and you're keeping them tight. So are our employees engaged? How are we have people coming and going? How are people feeling? This is the future of our company or the people that we employ. Customer driver, what are we seeing in terms of complaints or support tickets or cancellations or refunds? Cash driver. Obviously, this is the lifeblood of any company is cash in the bank, cash coming in, cash going out. And are we keeping an eye on expenses? Are we keeping an eye on things like sales discounts? And then pipeline coverage, talked about that a minute ago, how important that is looking every week, how are we doing on building new pipeline? Do we have enough to cover what we need to hit our goals? So quota coverage. And, is it going up or down? And then ultimately, are we bringing that pipeline home as a one revenue? So KPI in Catapult, the system we use is quantifiable, outcome-based, and clear. Quantifiable, it's got a number. So it's got a number, a dollar, or a percent associated to it. It's got an outcome. What are we trying to achieve? What is the result that we want? And it needs to be clear. So we got to be able to give this KPI to anybody in the company, and they know exactly what it's about. They shouldn't have to translate it, second guess. It's super clear, rock and roll. I know what my job is related to that. So there's 6 components. And one example that we kind of pulled out, real life, not uncommon. Our goal is we need to reduce our accounts receivable. What's the problem with this? Is everybody wants to do this. Every company wants to do this. But when it's phrased that way, it's unclear. It's not quantified. There's no time period. There's no target. There's not even a year of measurement. And we have no idea when we're going to look at it and measure it and decide if we're on track or off track. So we're going to break this down a little bit and show you a little bit how to help. So not going to go through all of these, just going to pull out a couple, bing, bing. First of all, what we want to do is clarify what we're after. And you clarify it through questions, right? And you say, okay, well, what do we want? What do we really want to achieve? Well, what we find out is we actually want to pay off our corporate debt, right? So we start out with, we just want to reduce, accounts receivable. But when we dig a little bit deeper, there's a whole different problem that we're trying to solve, which is pay off corporate debt. What kind of impact are we having, right, with this problem? So we find in this company, too cyclical with the revenue. Dial a second deeper or a layer deeper. Hey, when do you really want to get paid? When would you actually like to get paid? And in this company, they do business in phases. And they're saying, hey, we'd like to get paid on our phase 1 within a week of completion. All right, well that sounds reasonable. That's pretty reasonable thing for us to be asking. And now today, when do you actually invoice for phase 1? And they said, well, we invoice on completion at 7 days. Okay, well, let's think about maybe there's a different way to do that. So breaking it down a little further, making it actionable. So bringing all those things into play that we talked about. A couple of things kind of come out of it. And, so we recommend, percent of project invoices paid 7 days after phase 1 completion. So it's measured on a percentage. So we talked about, number, percent, or dollars. This is a percent. Time period, evergreen, forever. Target is 95%, and we're at 50. And what we're going to say, because it's really important to our company, we're going to say that the reporting frequency, we're going to at least start out weekly. Now, we might over time extend that monthly or even quarterly, but we're going to keep a close eye on that. Average days outstanding for phase one, we want that to be 7 days. And right now we're at 45 days. So, gosh, we got a problem here. And again, we want to keep an eye on that, start out with weekly and we can kind of extend that. Now, just by that change alone, we've actually made a strategic change on how we want to run accounts receivable. So it rolls down to what we call a strategic two KPI, which is our executive team level. And instead of invoicing on date of completion and asking for 7 days and then getting it in 45 days, we're going to invoice and we're going to queue up an invoice prior to completion of phase one so that it hits at, they got 30 days notice and then we're going to get paid on time, maybe a little early, but worst case, we would have cut it down from 45 to maybe 10 days. So it dramatically changes things all by just clarifying the outcome, putting it into the syntax, keeping things tight and keeping an eye on it week after week. Dean, back to you.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the power of precision and the right platform for your business. And so as we do this, haven't seen any questions in the chat box yet, but if you have those, please don't hesitate to throw those in there. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to primarily focus on Catapult. However, we're also going to talk about the Rockefeller habits and why that's important. When I look at this slide, one of the things that I think about is ease of implementation if you're going from left to right. And one of the things that I think you'll soon see is that Catapult helps you with that ease of implementation. So why are the Rockefeller habits important? Well, first of all, you as a business owner, your health is very important. Your team's health is very important. Obviously, I'm recovering from a respiratory infection, which has impacted my ability for the past week and a half to hold calls with my clients and just be healthy for my family as well. So that's very important. Again, I won't touch on all these. I'll grab just a few of them. But meeting rhythm. One of the things that I love is having that rhythm with preset agendas, and it really helps an organization get aligned. Case in point, a client of mine that's on Catapult, their weekly team meetings would run anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours. And what I found is these team meetings had an agenda, but they would go off the rails literally within 15 to 20 minutes. So the meeting rhythm, the agenda is very important, and it's helped them to reduce the amount of time that they're actually sitting in those meetings. As Steve's talked about KPIs and accountability, I won't go into that as he's already done a fabulous job with that. Quantitatively, understand how your employees are doing. You hate to see one of your star performers walking out the door and not understand why they're leaving. Early on in my corporate career, I pretty much had my entire team ready to walk out the door because I truly didn't understand how they were doing. Were they having a good week? And so luckily I was able to turn that ship around and get it headed in the right direction. And then last but not least is, as Steve's touched on, it's visible to all. So the corporate plan, the company plan and performance is visible to the team. Now, there are ways that if you have something in there, like your personal outcome statement, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that's not visible to everybody because obviously you may have some things in there that are personal. So, all right. So you get the structure from day one. 60 minutes is typical for an onboarding with the client. And as you're working through that onboarding process, what you're really doing is developing those L1 KPIs for your team. And as I talked about the rhythm aspect of it, it creates that accountability from a weekly perspective, mid-quarter, quarterly, and annual strategic planning. We have a case study that a 3-hour annual strategic planning session was, like I said, scheduled for 3 hours. They got it done in 90 minutes. And we're amazed and walked, literally out of the room, kind of scratching their head at how they did that. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. So here we go. So we focused on 3-year outcomes. If you think about, there is some science behind that. If you think about how phone numbers are structured, 3, 3, and 4, it's fairly easy to remember phone numbers because of that structure. So your personal and your company outcome statements are what you start with first. And we have, when I've had clients go through this exercise, I've given them examples of how to structure them, because you're talking more in the first person and as if it's already happened. You start to set up your team. Your executive team, as Steve's touched on, is going to be at the L2 level. You're going to add those folks in based on the department, the role, as well as the individual themselves. Mission, vision, and values. So we do have a placeholder for this. Now, I have worked with companies in the past and currently today that didn't have this really well crafted. So we start with a straw man per se framework within this and keep them moving. So from there, what we do is this is what your initial dashboard looks like. And we've already touched on this briefly, but this is really what helps to identify, green, red. If you're green, we're not going to talk about that in our weekly accountability meeting. This is when you look at the dashboard, these are your action items as well as your dashboard. One of the things that I love about this is it really helps your team from an accountability perspective. I'm sure some of you have had team members in the past that have been they're struggling with their action items and didn't really know how to communicate that. Well, through not only the preloaded rhythm along with agendas, but we've got a robust issue tracker. So if you've got a team member that's struggling to execute on that action item that they're assigned, we have a specific language called CHARP, which we won't get into today. We'd love to hear more about that. We do have that information, but it allows your team member to come in, identify what the issue is, do they need help with it? And if they need help, what kind of help do they need? So it really helps with that accountability and to keep them on track. And I'll give you, an example of that. One of my clients has a warehouse, and the warehouse manager is new to the role or fairly new to the role. However, was given a very key project, a 5S project. If you're familiar with lean, basically it's to go in and shine and sort and simplify. He had never done one of those. So one of the things he did is to ask for help using the system. I went in and having a background in lean and project management to help them create that plan to go and then execute that plan so that he could do that. All right, so this is your plan and catapult. Now, Steve's touched on this already. I'll just briefly talk about it, but really here's your corporate scorecard. It's concise, it's simple, it's clean. The one on the right is the vision traction with EOS. Now, I do know that there are softwares out there that can do this for you with EOS, but I think from a simplicity perspective, Catapult does that much better. So we do talk about a guarantee. Now, more time for you as the business owner, increased retention of those key employees, more profit, higher valuation. Who loves that higher valuation of the company when they go to sell it? Obviously, one of the things, Steve had that KPI or that case study earlier about that company that had a 35% revenue concentration in one client. They found that out when they went to the bank to sell the company because they wanted to sell it to their employees. So, and it took them 3 additional years to solve that problem. Cheaper money. Now with interest rates the way they are today, with the metrics that this creates for you, it helps you to identify and work with your financial folks on that cheaper money. And then last but not least is faster growth rates. And it's guaranteed with a catch. So we have a 66% guarantee that you're going to achieve the metrics and reap those benefits. We're going to show up. However, the third thing, which is why it's 66%, is you. And so with that said, we do have that guarantee. You will see the results provided you execute to that overall plan. And with that, I will turn it back over to Steve.
Yeah, so we talked about, the score 6 at the beginning. Really what you have is you have a session that's far faster, more consistent, more effective, and there's a rhythm to it. And so again, kind of going from there, you start with core 6. Then you've got your strategy to execute them. Those KPIs kind of talked about. We filter them down into level 2 metrics. And then my favorite is action items. What are we actually going to do to get this done? And a lot of that gets left out of strategic planning because we've got these grand plans and we think they're so awesome. And we forget to break it down to the point where what happens if so-and-so does or does not do, X? Are we going to hit our plan? And usually the answer is no. And a lot of people kind of forget to do that. And so, you got to get the action items, get clear who owns it and by when. And then, get a consistent measurement and evaluate. And, one of the things that we also like to do is make sure we're only spending time on things that are not on plan, right? Because a lot of times we're going to go through every single thing and, 8 out of 10 of those things are on track. And we burned an hour and a half just going through things that are on track. And then we, tend to run out of time on the 20 that need our attention. And so grabbing that evaluation and making sure that there's rhythm in how we're tackling things that are off track.
Yeah, and what's really key though is as well as those actions are tied back to your L3, 2, and 1 levels as well.
100%. So here's kind of our deal. We've got two options here. We got a quick start program, and that's basically everything that Dean just kind of talked about. We kind of get it going for you right out of the gate. So you get your plan on day 1, and so you press a button basically, and off you go, and you're off and running. Personalized coaching to set up those level 1, level 2 KPIs that we talked about. Really help you build those out, think them through, how do they cascade down to the next level. A facilitated strategic meeting, or we're side by side with you, helping you make that happen, and then training on running a really high quality meeting. And the value of that alone in time savings and efficiency and getting things done is huge. And so $59.99 is available through the middle of December. And that's an opportunity for everybody. And another opportunity is, hey, I loved what Dean and Steve said today. It makes a lot of sense to me. Let me take a peek under the hood, and that's an option as well. And so you can get started, you can play around with it, and then Dean and I would help you kind of take a peek at it and get things cooking. That's as easy as it comes at $1. Just kind of kick the tires a little bit. If you want, you can snap that QR code. It's going to also give you an opportunity to just kind of fill out, who you are, and we'll reach out to you with any questions you have. But yeah, so questions, or Dean, or anything else to bring to the table before we?
No questions in the chat, so must have did a fantabulous job of this presentation.
Outstanding.
Well, I think we can, Michael or Vincent, any questions? If not, I think we can go ahead and wrap up and give you some time back.
That's thumbs up from Vincent. Good to see you, my man. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well.
Nice presentation. Good stuff here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise. And no real questions. I guess I don't know, sandbox or whatever would be nice to look at how it can help. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Well, no, we greatly appreciate you attending today, and I think it's we once the recording's finalized, we will publish the recording as well and get you those links. So if you have if something comes up, feel free to reach out to one of us on LinkedIn, or as Steve said, that QR code there takes you to a form and allows you to fill that out for more information. So thank you, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Vincent. And I think we can go ahead and wrap up.
All right. Hey, thank you for the QR code. I'll definitely go to it. Thanks.
You bet.
Have a fantastic